Southern rock can be linked back to March 26, 1969, when Duane Allman, the founder and leader of the Allman Brothers Band, summoned his brother Gregg to join a band that fused blues, rock, jazz, and country music, a combination literally unheard of at the time. From forming the Allman Brothers Band in 1969 to his untimely death 2.5 years later, today we're looking at the life and tragic death of Duane Allman. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the Weird History channel, leave a comment, and let us know what music stories you would like to hear about next. Now, to the whipping post. Sometime in the summer of 1960, Howard Duane Allman bought his first motorcycle. According to his brother Gregg, the 14-year-old Duane became a terror of the neighborhood with that motorcycle. He was frequently seen and heard ripping through Daytona Beach, Florida, where the Allman family moved 2 years earlier. The same summer Duane bought his motorcycle, the 13-year-old Gregg got a summer job as a paperboy. After several months on the job, Gregg went to a Sears department store one afternoon with the intention of buying a pair of gloves. His attention, though, was diverted by a display of guitars. Instead of gloves, Gregg bought a Teisco Silvertone guitar. Back home, Duane used to play the guitar in a slide, which infuriated Gregg and caused the brothers to fight. But according to Gregg's 2012 autobiography, My Cross the Bear, there was no question that music brought the two together. When Duane rode his Harley into the ground, he traded in the salvageable parts for a Silvertone of his own. Gregg gave his older brother a few basic lessons, but Duane was a quick study. And after a year of practice and an inspirational B.B. King concert, the Allman Boys formed several local bands including the Kings, the Uniques, Y-Teens, the Shufflers, the Misfits, the Escorts, the Allman Joys, and Almanac. In early 1967, the Allman Boys were booked for a month-long engagement in St. Louis, Missouri. It was here that the brothers bumped into the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's manager, Bill McEwen. McEwen told the Allmans to stop spinning their wheels, give up the road, go to California, and get serious about making music, and get a recording contract. Duane and Gregg left Florida and relocated to Los Angeles with their group. McEwen got them an audition with Liberty Records, who then signed the band. But the record company wanted to mold them into a bland commercial rock band, similar to Los Angeles rock bands such as Iron Butterfly and the Byrds. Soon after signing the Allman Brothers five-piece, Liberty changed the band's name to Hourglass. They were forced to wear ridiculous hippie costumes and even restricted their live gigs to preserve the band's mystique. Liberty didn't even let Hourglass choose the songs on their self-titled debut album and only loosened the reins on their second album after the failure of the first. Gregg Allman called Hourglass's output a shit sandwich. Yep, that's probably where Spinal Tap got that line from. After the demos for a potential third album recorded at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals were rejected by Liberty, Duane and Gregg moved back to Florida and sort of dissolved Hourglass without really telling anyone. When Liberty Records threatened to sue Hourglass for breaking up, Gregg went back to Los Angeles in the fall of 1968 to record a solo record for them, which would fulfill the band's contract. With the disaster of Hourglass behind him, Duane spent a few months jamming with local Florida musicians. Nothing was really clicking for him in regards of forming another band. Duane was in a holding pattern. Luckily, Fame Studios owner Rick Hall remembered Duane from Hourglass's recent sessions, sent him a telegram to see if he was interested in a paid gig. And in November of 1968, Duane Allman played lead guitar on Wilson Pickett's song, Hey Jude. It was during the sessions for that album that inspired Pickett to give Duane his nickname, Skydog, because he could hit the heights. Hall was also pretty impressed with Duane's session work. He signed Skydog to a 5-year contract as Fame Studios' primary guitarist, where he played for Aretha Franklin, Percy Sledge, Otis Rush, and countless others. But it was Duane's work with Pickett that created a buzz. This is how Eric Clapton put it. I remember hearing Wilson Pickett's Hey Jude and just be astounded by the lead break at the end. I had to know who that was immediately, right now. While under contract with Rick Hall's Fame Studio, Duane slowly put a band together consisting of drummer J-Mo Johansson, Johnny Sadlin as the second drummer, Paul Hornsby on guitar and keys, and bassist Barry Oakley. The group had immediate chemistry, and Duane's vision for a different-sounding band, one with 2 lead guitarists and 2 drummers, began taking shape. Duane was thrilled at how well his unnamed band was gelling, but Duane was slowly becoming frustrated with being what he called a robot for Fame Studios producers and musicians that came through using him as a young gun for hire. Now, depending on who's telling the story, Duane's future was decided by either Rick Hall of Fame Studios or Atlantic Records vice president Jerry Wexler. According to Jimmy Johnson, co-founder of the Muscle Shoals Sound Studio, the moment Jerry Wexler heard Duane's solo on Pickett's Hey Jude on a lo-fi playback over the phone, he called Phil Walden, who had been looking for an artist to manage ever since his client Otis Redding died. After quite a successful run managing soul and R&B acts, Walden wanted to switch genres into rock music. So Wexler excitedly told Walden about Duane, who then immediately flew to Muscle Shoals to buy Allman's famed studio contract from Rick Hall. Walden and Wexler envisioned Duane and his band as the foundation of their new Atlantic distributed label, Capricorn Records. Now, if Rick Hall tells the story, he says he wasn't happy with Duane or his recording methods. According to Randy Poe's 2008 biography, Skydog, the Duane Allman Story, he offered Wexler and Walden the chance to buy out Duane's contract and the tracks his band recorded for $10,000. Given a second chance, a new contract with Capricorn Records, and the freedom to make whatever kind of music he wanted, Duane returned to Jacksonville, Florida. Duane was now in search of the perfect band. Already jamming with Barry Oakley on bass and Dickie Betts on lead guitar, J-Mo on drums, Duane also recruited Butch Trucks as his band's second drummer, and a couple of weeks after he assembled these players, the five musicians found themselves jamming in a small room at Oakley's home. The jam went on for 3 or 4 hours, and when the music trailed off, Duane looked around the room and said to no one in particular, "Man, anyone who ain't in this band has got to fight their way out." Now all they needed was a singer, but Duane already had a plan. Duane called Gregg in Los Angeles where, unbeknownst to him, his little brother was considering suicide. Gregg explains the situation in a letter he drunkenly wrote to Cameron Crowe in 1973 while on tour promoting their most recent album, Brothers and Sisters. "I'd been building the nerve to put a pistol to my head. Then Duane called me and told me that he had a band. He said, 'I want you to come down here, round it up, and send it somewhere.' I put my thumb out and caught the first thing smoking for Jacksonville." Gregg was intimidated by the musicians Duane put together, but his big brother pressured him into singing his guts out. It was a sink-or-swim moment, and Gregg delivered. It was at this rehearsal on March 26, 1969, when the group was rehearsing Muddy Waters' Trouble No More, that Duane's vision came together and Southern rock was conceived. 4 days later, after Gregg's first rehearsal with Duane and the group, the Allman Brothers Band made their debut on March 30th, 1969 at the Jacksonville Beach Armory. Oddly enough, Gregg didn't perform with the band for this gig. Duane Allman was only 22 years old, but after a year and a half in Hourglass, he taught himself to become arguably the greatest slide guitar player in the world. He invented a genre of music that would later become Southern rock, and in 2.5 years, he would be gone. Once the Allman Brothers were signed to Capricorn Records, Duane didn't break from his cycle of rehearsing, recording, and touring for 2 years. Phil Walden suggested moving the band to Macon, Georgia, where he was in the process of setting up Capricorn Records. The band eventually moved into the former frat house near the local college the band christened the Hippie Crash Pad. It was there the Allman Brothers Band recorded their self-titled debut between August 3rd and 12th of 1969, and released it on November 4th, 1969. They then set out on a rigorous 2-year tour, performing nearly 500 dates in an Econoline van and later a Winnebago nicknamed the Windbag. As a result of the band's relentless touring schedule, their second album, Idlewild South, was recorded in bits and pieces over a period of 5 months in various cities including New York, Miami, and Macon between February through July in 1970. When sales proved to be as slow for Idlewild South, Duane pushed the band to perform 300 gigs in 1970, which actually earned the band a reputation of being a phenomenal live band. This revelation gave Duane a career-making idea. The Allman Brothers' third album would be recorded live at the Fillmore East, Bill Graham's legendary New York rock venue. And it would be here where Duane Allman would become a legend. At Fillmore East was released as a double album on July of 1971, and within 2 weeks it landed on the American charts. The group encountered huge crowds at every gig following the release, and guitarists would seek out Duane backstage and tell him how much he had inspired them to stop playing safe, commercial rock and play real music. Finally, enjoying a little success after 2 years on the road since their debut, the band decided to take a short vacation, relax, and enjoy some of their success. On October 21, 1971, Duane took a short ride on his Harley-Davidson Sportster to Barry Oakley's 2-story band headquarters and residence the group called the Big House in Macon. He was going to wish Oakley's wife Linda a happy birthday. Shortly after leaving the Big House at about 5:45 p.m., Duane headed east out on Macon on Hillcrest Avenue. It was at the intersection of Hillcrest and Bartlett that Duane spotted a flatbed truck crossing Hillcrest from his left to his right. The truck suddenly stopped in the intersection, forcing Duane to swerve sharply to the left. At this point, Duane clipped the back of the truck's bed and was thrown from the motorcycle. Duane's Sportster flew in the air, landed on him, and slid between 50 and 90 feet beyond the point of impact. The weight of the motorcycle crushed his internal organs. According to a report by John Landau from Rolling Stone on November 25, 1971, Duane's girlfriend Dixie Meadows and Barry Oakley's sister Candy were following him from some distance behind and had not seen the accident. When the girls found Duane under his motorcycle, they stayed with him until an ambulance arrived. He reportedly stopped breathing twice in the ambulance, but was revived both times through mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Although Duane was alive when he arrived at the Macon Medical Center, his massive injuries were too much for his body, despite 3 hours of surgery. Dr. Charles Burden, the attending surgeon, later said that any of those injuries Duane sustained, his collapsed chest, his ruptured coronary artery, or severely damaged liver, would probably have caused his death. But the combination of all these injuries left very little hope upon arrival. And at the age of 24, only 2.5 years after the Allman Brothers formed, Duane Allman was dead. Services were held 3 days later, on Monday, November 1st, 1971, at Macon's Memorial Chapel. Nearly 300 friends, relatives, and admirers attended. Duane's guitar case was propped up at the front of his floral wreath casket, and the Allman Brothers Band gear was set up behind. At 3 p.m., the remaining members of the band played several of their songs as a tribute to Duane, such as The Keys to the Highway, which Duane had recorded with Eric Clapton on Layla, then did Stormy Monday and Elizabeth Reed. Gregg also sang a couple of the songs by himself while playing Duane's antique guitar. When Gregg finished, he lowered his head and fingered the guitar's fretboard nervously and said, "This is a very old guitar, a very beautiful piece. It was made in 1920, and I'm very proud to have it. And I'm very proud that you all came." Although the Allman Brothers Band stayed together until 2014 with several hiatuses and several different musicians along the way, they are never the same after Duane's death. Bassist Barry Oakley died in a drunken motorcycle accident about 3 blocks away from where Duane died a year and 2 weeks after Duane's crash. Gregg testified against Scooter Herring, his personal road manager and valet, after Herring was charged with multiple counts of conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Gregg's testimony labeled him as a snitch among bandmates, and the Allman Brothers Band broke up. The band reformed, but they never quite captured the spirit they possessed when Duane was their leader. So what do you think would have happened if Duane would have lived? Would he have been the greatest guitarist of all time? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other music stories from our weird history.